This is Ryu, and this is also Ryu. They may visually look different, but both of them have the tools that make Ryu, Ryu. They both have a fireball, a DP, a Tatsu. Sure, one has new moves compared to the old one, and they have different system mechanics, but Ryu has had the same core tool sets for decades now. Thus, Ryu should have the most consistent game plan throughout all of the mainline Street Fighter titles. Right? Well, here's Ryu and how he played like in Street Fighter 4.
Oh, I like the backdash. Trying to get out of the way of that Dragon Punch.
Oh, Vi just daring Daigo to throw an EX.
Fireball game, so fun and risky.
And here's what Ryu plays like in Street Fighter 6.
At far, but he went for it anyway.
Yeah, there you go. What? Ooh. Heavy punch hit, do nothing into another heavy punch for a counter hit, and then...
How did Ryu have such a dramatic shift in their strategy from one game versus the other? Well, let's explore that, and the evolution of Street Fighter's most iconic character. This is the tale of two Ryus. So, to break it down how Ryu played like throughout the history of Street Fighter, we can kind of put it into two eras. The first era was the zoning and footsies based game plan that he had in the early days of Street Fighter. So, let's go way back in an era where everyone met at their local arcades, and depending on how salty your opponent was, they would pull out a knife because they thought throws were really cheap. Now let's head to Super Turbo, where that version of Street Fighter 2 has the most competitive history. In this version of the game, Ryu had very strong footsies and zoning based game plan. Though I'm not too much of an expert on Super Turbo, Ryu had a good tool set which all hinged on his amazing fireball. Ryu also had good tools for most situations, but his fireball was the star of the show. Useful as a poke to force the opponent into committing to some sort of risky option like jumping in on Ryu, allowing him to anti-air him with DP. He also had moves that allowed him to close the space between him and the opponent, like forward fierce or light Tatsu. On top of that, the ability to special cancel his sweep into Hadouken, pushing the opponent basically full screen if they were to block it. Put all of that together, Ryu had the means to walk his opponent down into the corner and pressure them with pokes and fireballs, or the ability to keep them out at arm's length and whittle down their health bar. This footsies and zoning based game plan continued in Street Fighter 4. He had all the same tools that allowed him to enforce his zoning playstyle. However, the system mechanics of Street Fighter 4 enhanced Ryu's game plan even further. First was the fact that Ryu could build meter by throwing out fireballs, which he often does. On top of that, when he has meter, he could use EX Hadouken, which is a 2-hit fireball. This is used to get extra damage or to win a fireball war exchange. Ryu also had the ability to safely check Street Fighter 4's universal mechanic, Focus Attack, which often is used to mitigate the chip damage from fireballs. Focus Attack could only absorb one hit, and so most people in neutral would just absorb the fireball to build their ultra meter and also avoid taking chip damage. Ryu having access to EX Fireball but also a safe block string and low forward fireball made it so that Focus Attack to counter Ryu's fireball was pretty risky. Lastly is the introduction of FADC and Ultra. Ryu's strong, footsie and zoning based game plan can all of a sudden dish out big damage. Sure, Ryu can go on the offensive and attempt to maul his opponent, but his main playstyle is so solid and reliable that oftentimes Ryu main relied on the slow, methodical game plan that he has. So this in a nutshell is the zoning and footsies based era for Ryu, and he would continue this in other games like Third Strike and Street Fighter V, but the fireball aspect of his game plan was a little bit understated due to not as much value as it had in Super Turbo or in Street Fighter 4. Take for example in Third Strike, Ryu cannot use fireballs to zone his opponent out like he could in Street Fighter 4 or in Super Turbo because of the parry mechanic. Throwing a fireball out in the open is easy parry fodder for your opponent, on top of having them being able to gain meter from parrying your fireball. This would be kind of the same problem too in Street Fighter 5. Not only is zoning discouraged in the game due to the amount of anti-fireball tools that pretty much most of the cast has access to, but also the introduction of V-Trigger allowing for such explosivity in the game, relying on this slow, methodical, footsie-based game plan that tries to kill your opponent in multiple exchanges is unstable when potentially the opponent could just land one jump in into V-Trigger and you have to guess for game. Despite all that, Ryu still kept his core identity. He used his strong pokes and his good footsie tools to essentially win the game, and it isn't like fireballs were completely useless, as it was still a somewhat useful poke in Third Strike and in Street Fighter V. Ryu still had something going on. I mean, in Third Strike he had Denjin Hadoken, which was an unblockable high stun super for him that allowed him to make setups and get great damage on his opponent. On top of that, you know, in Street Fighter V, in Season 1, Ryu was pretty strong. So despite all the attempts to sort of make his fireballs less useful, he was still not helpless. But we slowly get into something that I think a lot more people probably know Ryu as in the more recent times, and this is kind of tied to, you know, him having this core identity of being generally well-rounded but not really excelling at anything. This kind of era we can kind of sum it up as Ryu the worst Shoto, or more specifically, the worst version of Ken and Akuma. So this sort of era / identity for Ryu being called the worst Ken and Akuma is specifically started after the Season 2 patches. When Ryu was really strong in Season 1, Capcom basically dealt a series of nerfs to him in Season 2. To name a few of the big nerfs, Ryu's throw created more distance from him and the opponent, causing Ryu to lose his throw loops. His standing medium punch hitbox was reduced and hurtbox increased, making it a worse poke to throw out against the opponent, and his standing light punch having a smaller hitbox, making his anti-air jabs much worse. These nerfs, along with other ones, severely hampered Ryu, but on top of the nerfs, Ryu lacked something even more important. What Ryu lacked was standout tools that separated himself from Ken and Akuma. Despite being a well-rounded character with good tools for almost any situation, what made him less appealing was the fact that when you compare him to Ken and Akuma, what does he really have? For example, in Street Fighter V, Ken had V-Skill 1, which allowed him to basically enhance his sort of rush-down game plan. On top of that, his V-Trigger 2 was an amazing anti-fireball tool with great follow-ups after. He also had a sort of an EX dive kick with EX Air Tatsu that led to juggles when you get hit by it. And Akuma, well, he just kind of had it all. There's a reason why Akuma has been consistently top tier throughout the entire history of Street Fighter V up until the last patch. Some of the great tools that Akuma had in Street Fighter V, he used to be able to activate V-Trigger on whiffed fireballs, he could corner switch out easily, and he just had great overall damage. Like, Akuma pretty much had it all as a Shoto. This would eventually still be the same case in Street Fighter 6, where Ken outshined Ryu in almost every aspect. Ken's Stand Fierce was amazing, his Jinrai was absolutely obnoxious, having the best corner carry in the game on top of the side switching, and funnily enough, OD Fireball being better than Ryu's, as Ken's OD Fireball didn't knock down the opponent, so he could drive rush behind it and either get free pressure or get a combo if it hits. And then when Akuma got released, it just got even worse. Akuma with this amazing stand light kick, Adamant Flame allowing you to get great combo damage, but also is just a good, drive check bait against your opponent. The Demon Flips, which make him very tricky to anti-air effectively. Like, Ryu, for the majority of the modern Age of Fighting games, has been outclassed by his Shoto counterparts. And it was looking like it was going to still be the case going into Street Fighter 6. However, a storm was brewing. And that storm has brought us the new era of Ryu, the Gorilla era of Ryu. So of course this Gorilla era didn't happen overnight. There was a lead up to it. First was the series of buffs Capcom gave Ryu throughout Season 1 and Season 2 of Street Fighter 6. The first series of buff giving him expanded proximity guard on Ryu's solar plexus, making it so that it's difficult to just walk away from it. On top of that, making his light Hashogeki safe by making it -3 on block, while also having heavy Hashogeki push the opponent back less on block. Next patch was the buff to his Denjin charge, where he no longer was forced to use the charge immediately. Instead, he could store it and still have access to his light, medium, Hashogeki, and fireballs. And instead, the Denjin stock would be used if he used Fierce or OD versions of it. On top of that, allowing his target combos to cancel in the Denjin charge, allowing Ryu to still get Oki while being able to get Denjin charge. And they buffed solar plexus even more by making it +3 on block. Also making heavy donkey kick have faster startup and increased drive gauge damage, and making it safe on block. And these buffs really started to add up. I mean, you can take a look at Kusanagi, for example, where they were able to win UFA with Ryu. Soon after, you would see the same thing with Blas, where he was just taking down legend after legend at Capcom Cup, being able to take Lashar and Angry Bird out very convincingly. But the floodgates would not open until June 2025 balance patch update. Though a lot of Ryu's most oppressive buffs were in the prior patches, this one juiced Ryu up to just such ludicrous amounts of damage. The buff to his level 2 with Denjin charge up just made him have the biggest damage from the most simplest conversions. Top of that, the joke going around that Capcom gave Ryu a gun by allowing his Super 1 with Denjin charge basically become a giant rail cannon. But it wasn't just Ryu having amazing puffs, but in this patch, pretty much it was rather light. Everyone else either got light buffs or nerfs, and Ryu was the only standout who had a good amount of buffs to him. With this sort of context in mind, Ryu just sort of shot up the tier list. The characters that did get buffs were so minor that it really didn't necessarily affect them too much, and the characters that got nerfs were knocked down a peg to make them much weaker. And so this is where we're currently at with Ryu. Somebody in the past who could rely on strong fireballs and good footsie tools, and was just generally a very well-rounded character, to now being somebody who just demolishes your drive gauge, and basically if you get touched by him, you die. Will this be the new identity for Ryu moving forward? Is this the vision that Capcom has for their iconic Street Fighter character? Who knows? But hey, tell me in the comments, what do you think of Ryu in Street Fighter 6? Do you think Gorilla best describes Ryu now? What era of Ryu do you like the best? Do you think Capcom will continue to make Ryu into this kind of archetype, or do you think they'll change it up like they did in the previous games? Well, this has been the Yuckster. Thank you very much for watching the video. Hope you have a good New Year's, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. See you next time.